And so we really incorporated 3 hard cheeses and 2 cream cheeses. And this was to essentially play with that texture on the palate, rather than just the flavors. And we didn't want to put, you know, the double cream brie and a triple cream brie and have that be kind of the only, you know, kind of different texture with the cheeses. So this is a prairie brie. It's from Switzerland. It is important whenever you are making a charcuterie board to make sure that you've got all of your allergies straight, because there is lactose here, and I'm going to be putting nuts on there as well, and gluten on the side. So it's important to also kind of keep a strategy with maybe don't put the cheeses everywhere, maybe keep the lactose where it needs to be. And I've already actually prepared the meats because we have a meat carver, and it just is a lot easier to take care of these. They are all Italian style meats. This right here is a peppered salami, and so it's actually a pretty simple, unaged salami, just with naturally pepper on the outside, packaged and sold. The next one is probably one of my favorite artisanal meats. This is called bresaola, and essentially this is wine-cured beef. And what I mean by that is that this beef is dry aged after it has been soaked in wine. Typically Chianti or with Sangiovese or Nebbiolo, some sort of like very Italian style wine. Aged for anywhere up to 4 months typically. Anything longer than that is really artisanal and not something that you might find very frequently. So then we move to a coppa, which is another type of salami. You'll find salami quite a bit, like pepperoni, margherita style. You'll find that on almost every charcuterie board. It's just one of those meats that can just stand on its own. And so we actually have 3 styles: the peppered salami, the coppa, and later I'll bring out the soppressato salami. And these are very thin cuts, but not so much thin like you go to the deli and you order like a chip chop ham or something like that. Not so thin. This is the soppressato. Yet again, another type of salami, very, very similar in style to the peppered salami, actually. The coppa is not so much sausage ground and rolled. It is very much a whole piece of pork. That's treated very much like the bresaola as far as aging is concerned. And finally, you cannot have any charcuterie board without prosciutto or pancetta. If you're Spanish, if you like pancetta better. But what this is very, very, very thinly sliced ham. You can actually see through it. You can see my fingers actually through the meat itself. But this offers an incredible salinity to your char board, and if anybody is a big ham or bacon fan, they'll just go nuts with this. If you're making this at home, if you put a little bit of cracked black pepper over it, it might be just about perfect. The one thing that is important whenever you're considering meats for a charcuterie board is the fat content. And you can see, really the only one that's not necessarily super fatty is the bresaola, and that's just because of the cut of meat. Everything else you can see striations or marblings, and it's just got fat in it. And that's another important key aspect to a charcuterie board. And there was no fat, and then you added like a bresaola, and you just kind of kept it with like a margherita style pepperoni that doesn't have a lot of fat in it. You really get grating, because the one thing that makes cheese so well paired with wine is that it is essentially a coagulated fat. And so this fat, it kind of doesn't agree with alcohol. So chemically in your mouth, there's a lot of things going on whenever you take a bite of something very fatty and then you take a drink of anything with ethanol in it, alcohol. after the meats and cheeses, those are kind of the star players. You really kind of get into your seasonal things. And we've got things like artichoke hearts, sun-dried tomatoes, just mustard, things that people enjoy, just kind of as something outside of just your typical meats and cheeses. This, for instance, is the artichoke hearts, preserved in olive oil. And you do want to make sure everything is morsel size. A charcuterie board's not supposed to be complicated to eat. It's only supposed to be not necessarily complicated, but the work process should always go in well beforehand. You shouldn't have to really work at eating this. It should all just be put it on a piece of bread or just pop it in your mouth. We are very much finger people here. We do offer skewers for things that are really kind of sticky, like this artichoke heart. We've got something like an apricot preserve, something a bit sweeter. And you do want to hit like a lot of those kind of typical flavor. We've got the savory in the meats, we've got the sweet in the apricot preserve, we've got the salty with the prosciutto. It's important to be able to hit all those flavor profiles. It's part of that exploration of my favorite ingredients, and it's only because I'm in love with pickles. These are cornichons. These are essentially the predecessor of modern day, I don't know, what do you call those? The Vlasic, the really tiny pickles, the babies. But that's kind of the sour aspect of the charcuterie board. And because you're drinking wine and figs and olives are kind of classic ingredients for this type of thing. And so this is a fig preserve or fig spread. Simple stone ground mustard here, both types of seeds, so yellow and brown. Just something else a bit spreadable in case somebody doesn't like to just eat bread as it is. So long as your board's not going to be sitting out for hours and hours and hours, it's almost completely fine to put everything just on the board. And actually, a lot of people will tell you, woodworkers, we had these boards custom made, that if it's essentially oil, that whatever has been preserved in, so you can even put things like anchovies or sardines on your charcuterie board. They might smell a bit, and your party guests might not enjoy that, but as long as they're preserved in olive oil or anything like that, the wood actually doesn't mind oil too much. And so these are the sun-dried heirloom tomatoes. And so that is essentially our Bacchus charcuterie board. This is just about everything. We have candied walnuts and dried cranberries as well. I haven't left myself too much room here, have I? We typically weigh everything out to about an ounce, so I was eyeballing this time. A lot of this was jarred or bought, but any sort of made product, homemade products. You can, even if you did like a simple ricotta cheese at home, it's a pretty simple cheese to make. That would be perfectly fine. It's a little bit creamy, but that is the Bacchus charcuterie.